So guys, tune into the show. Don't miss it because it's going to be an amazing show. You are going to be touched. You're going to be amazed. You're going to be excited. It's Thursday, 11 o'clock on a Thursday. The Message Talk Show with Alex Gordon. Yes, don't miss it.
Good morning, folks. Good morning. It's welcome again to the Message Talk Show. It's host Alex Gordon. This is the Message Talk Show where we interview inspirational, mission-centered individuals who are contributing to the world one day at a time, one step at a time, using their gifts to impact the world that we live in. Since the last time I broadcasted, there's been so much happening in the world, so much. But despite that, you have to push through. You have to become the person that you're meant to become. And you have to be where you've got to be. Why? Because you're here and you're here for a reason. Today, I have me with an amazing person on the show today by the name of Annette Pearson. Annette, how are you today?
I'm really well, thank you, Alex. It's always good when you and I get together and talk. Inspirational.
It's always amazing just hearing you talk because you've got so much to give, so much to say, and so much is happening in your world all the time. So today we're going to talk about discovering your why and not the how. Forget the how, guys, and find the why behind what you're doing and where you're going and why you're here, why you've got to become the person you need to become. Am I right, Ruth?
Oh, definitely, Alex. When I sit at the journey that I've been on, especially since COVID's come, that, if I didn't know that I had a purpose of being here, it would have been very difficult to go through some of
Ruth,
the experiences I've been through.
Yes. Don't talk about COVID, Ruth, man. COVID has just slapped us across the face, man, and it just won't go away. It's something that we seem like we're going to have to live with. And the rates are still going back up again, That is terrible. Yeah. But hey, we're here to talk about discover your why, Ruth. So let me just push off the show by asking Ruth to just tell the audience, who are you, who do you serve, and what got you to where you are today?
Okay, so who do I start? Who am I? Depending on the circle that you know me in, people now know me as Annette Pearson. In the past, they knew me as Ruth Pearson, co-teacher by profession, author, lay pastor. So many roles I have depending on what I'm doing. Who do I serve? The education community. I serve women. I also serve, a lot of people seem to be recently gravitating to me when they are going through challenging times in their life and they need someone to speak with them who's been through challenges themselves and how they can build up resilience. What has got me here? Challenges. When I say challenges with a capital C have got me here. But those challenges now I'm using as stepping stones to greatness. Those challenges in the past would have pushed me down, but you have to change your mindset. And when you change your mindset and you start to dig deeper within, then you see you have so much more that you can offer others through challenges that you've been through.
But Ruth, you can't get anywhere in life without challenges. There is nowhere you can go without challenges in your life, Ruth. And you have a thriving publishing business. So no matter what challenges you've been through, you can just write about your challenges. Isn't that amazing?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I have books that I've written, as you rightly say, that, my first book was Listening to God's Voice, which shared my healing testimony. I have another book, Say Yes to Opportunities, that shared when I had my meltdown. And now I'm using my experiences that I'm happening now to share other experiences about, how do you cope with bullying in the workplace? How do you cope with discrimination and racism? Those are some of the core issues now that's impacting society. And those are some of the core issues now that I will be writing about in the future.
So let's pull you back then, Ruth. What got you on the road to publishing? Why did you think that you had to write? What drove you to that point in your life?
It's interesting now that we're in April. And 8 years ago in April, some people wouldn't actually imagine that I was in a hospital bed. It's probably about my second week in the hospital, in the middle of a major lupus flare-up, with my consultants wondering how I could be at work one day and basically sick in the hospital, to the extent that, hospitals are not a quiet place, but when I'm really, really sick, you can do what you want to do around me and I don't hear the noise. I go into, it's almost just over. I'm not in a coma, but really, really in this deep sleep. And I was in the middle of this lupus flare-up. I'd also recently had got made redundant the year before. So this is the first time now I'm sick with my lupus. I'm not working, and it's what am I going to do with my time when I come out of the hospital? And previous years I had met a writing coach, and she, after I'd got out of the hospital, and said to me, I think you should start writing. Now, I'm a science and maths teacher, but she said that I needed to start writing. So I started to write some of the experiences that I was going through. And you'll see that, my company is called Listen Voice. And the first devotion I wrote was called Listening to Your Voice. And what does that entail? About having conversations with others and really listening and having a focus in terms of the conversation. And then I wrote another devotion called Be a Good Witness, and a third one, Refreshed and Restored. Now, 2 weeks after I wrote these devotions, I ended back up in hospital again, really, really sick. And I was due to go to a retreat in May of 2014. And when I basically 2 days before I'm going to go to this retreat, I'm having a conversation with doctors in the hospital and saying, I'm due to go to this retreat, but obviously I can't walk and I'm in a lot of pain. But I believe God really had his hand there, because a consultant said to me it would be really good for me to go and get out of London, just go have some time different from being in the hospital. And I left on the Friday evening with my Motability scooter working, and I arrived at this retreat and my scooter decided it wasn't going to work. So I was not able to walk away for a retreat. And those of you who are from a faith background and you go to these retreats and they tell us that our life is going to change this weekend. And I just heard that like everybody else. But something within me told me to write down what this lady was sharing about. And she was sharing that our lives this weekend are going to completely transform and we're going to go back home in a different way than when we actually arrived on the Friday. And I shared my first devotional with the women, listening to your voice, because I listened to the voice of this lady. And then on the Saturday afternoon, we had other presentations about us and about not carrying baggages. And I shared the second devotion called Be a Good Witness. Later that evening, I was going to be a good witness. We were having a church service, praise and worship service. And the lady who did the presentation on the Friday evening, she came over to me to take my hand. Now, I'm reluctant to go with her. I can't walk, and I'm listening to what the doctors are telling me that I need to look after myself. But she took me into the middle of the room. And when she took me in the middle of the room, she put me in a position of praise and she touched my head. And then she started to touch my hips and I started to cry. And I became so emotionally overwhelmed that I knelt down on the floor. And I thought I had gone to sleep. But those looking on said, no, I cried out all this pain for all these years that I've been carrying. They said I was crying out that pain. And then I curled up in the position, like a fetal position. I wasn't moving. I wasn't doing anything. And then God told another lady who was there to tell me to rise up and walk. And she touched me and I opened my eyes and she just said the rise up. She didn't say and the walk. But I stood, and when I stood up, I realized actually I was taller than before. Like my back was straighter and I was taller. And you can imagine the women who were there, we were crying, went around the room, and the women were just saying to me that, you know, God has chosen me for a purpose. And then I went into the middle of the room with this lady by my side. And initially I was walking on my own with her. And then she told me I needed to run. And there I was running back and forward in this whole. Now, when
But
God,
Ruth, let me ask you a question there, because you're making this seem so simple. You're making this seem so simple. But for the ordinary person, I'm asking this question: why did you just suddenly believe what this woman told you?
I think something within me, like when I went to the lady, I didn't know that she was going to heal me. I didn't know that that was why I was going into the middle of the room. She just took me and she just said, look, that she wanted to pray with me. And I think as she said, and as she touched my hips, I just became emotionally overwhelmed. I'd never been in that atmosphere where you just felt God's presence was just there in an unusual way. But it was like, as she was there with me and as all the women were there with me.
How do you know that was God's presence you felt?
How?
What was it? What was there about it that made you think it was God's presence in the first place?
I mean, it's like if you go to somewhere and you know that this place is special. I mean, we were in a hotel, so we weren't even in a church, right? We was in a hotel room, but you could just sense that this wasn't the normal hotel. It was just something different that was around here. And prior to this, the women were singing a song, "There's No One Like Jesus." And I was there with my feet upon the chair, and I couldn't join in with them. But it was like, as best I could, I was enjoying the song that they were singing. So I think it was just a combination of the women there singing. And if you go into a church setting, sometimes you sense, if you're from a faith background, you can sense that something's different taking place here than the norm. Said when I went, and the lady put me in the middle of the room, and she put me in the position of praise, and she touched my head. I am not an emotional person. No, me and emotions don't mix. So for me to be crying the way I was crying, I just thought, this is different. And then, as I said, I thought when I was kneeling on the ground, I thought I had gone to sleep, but as you say, those who were there said I didn't. And they just said I was crying out a load of pain. They could physically see this pain was coming out of my body. And when all that was finished, they told me I was silent. So, you imagine we're in this church setting, they've seen emotionally, all of this emotions coming out of me, and I'm crying, and it's loud and loud, they were saying, and all of a sudden I go quiet.
This is the backdrop to your writing, yeah? This is all the backdrop to your writing. So when you were writing, you were in pain as well.
Yes. I was
you
writing.
You were suffering when you were writing.
I was suffering. I was in pain. I was questioning God. Why am I going through so many challenges in my life? Why is this the first time in my life now? I'm in the middle of a lupus flare-up, the worst flare-up I've ever had in my life, and I'm not working. So at least before I had the flare-ups, I was teaching, so you knew at least income's coming in. Now there's no income. Now I'm on benefits. Now it's like, I completely...
So these were real challenges. These were real challenges.
This was real challenges. And I mean, this is real challenge to the extent that I always used to think that when people who were really, really sick, you hear this day where they just perk up. They go really down and they perk up. And it's like they call everybody and they tell everybody that this is my last day. And they have all those conversations that they need to have. And then when the time is right, God just takes them. And I had one of those days in the midst of all of this, ringing my family, ringing my friends and saying,
wow,
I don't think I'm going to come through this.
So you felt this was it. You felt that this was the moment then when you would not come back.
This was, it was a really strange day. I got up in the morning. As I said to you, I wasn't working. And that morning, I'd got an email from the government to say that they were going to pay me benefits, but it wasn't going to be much because I have my house. So it's not like you can get like a lot of benefits if you're not working. So this had come through and I put on music. That was the first day I was putting in worship and I was just putting on all these songs and I was just connecting to God in a new way. And my friends were ringing me.
Why the music? Why the music? What was the music doing to you?
The music was allowing me to just see to God. That one of the songs was like, you were in it after all, that, so you was in it after all. That was one of the songs I was listening to, that in the pain I was going through, that God, you're telling me you're in here with me. God will make a way. That was one of the other songs I was listening to. So I was just listening to these songs that you're saying to God, I don't understand what's going on here, but you're telling me that you will make a way.
I don't know where you're listening from today. I don't know where you're listening from or what background you are or what faith you are at all. But Ruth is saying, despite the challenges you're going through, you have to know that there's a way. There is a way. There is a way to get through this. She just said that God will make a way, whether you believe it or not. She's telling you that God will make a way. There is a way. So in order for God to make a way, what have you got to do, Ruth?
Believe that he's there. I think that was like, I remember like, this, I just had, like, as I said, the 3 weeks the first time I'd had the 3 weeks in the hospital. I had come out at the weekend. So this was like, so if you imagine, this was April, my healing took place in May. So this was April. I'm not working. I'm at a low point. I'm in a lot of pain and I'm questioning God, what's going on in my life? And in this time, as I said, it was really strange, like, playing this music. And I think part of it as well was that the day before, a couple of days before, I was listening to a YouTube video by TD Jake, and he was talking in this about how you're going to get it back. And he was saying that God is going to impregnate you with an idea. Now, and the idea that God gave to me, which now I understand really was from him, was that I was going to become an author. Now, I'm a science teacher. I don't write books. English was never my strong subject. But this idea that I had was I was going to become an author and I was going to write books of my experiences to help others. Now, this is so far-fetched from what I was doing at the time. And then, as I said, that this lady who coach, she rang me the day after I was listening to this audio from TD Jakes to tell me now is the time for me to start. And then in the midst of all of this now, God is saying to me that I need to give him the praise. Now, when we go through challenging times, to praise God sometimes can be difficult because we start to blame God for what we're going through. But God, here was God saying to me that you have nothing. All the things I would normally depend on, I don't have anything. But in my nothingness, God wanted me to give him the praise. And that's why that morning I was waking up and I was praising. Wow. And I was singing.
That is difficult to believe for the average man, that whatever you're going through, that everything you're going through, there's a reason why you're going through it. And it's all attached to it. It's all part of the same system for getting to you to where you need to go. That everything that you're going through is that there's a reason for it. When you're going through all this and voices are telling you that there's a reason for it, what do you think as a normal human being in your own mind, what do you go through in your own mind at that point in life?
When you're going through that, God reasoning, everything is completely out the window. This was an unusual day for me to be praised because I wasn't like in that framework the day before, so it's about being real. I mean, it's like, I remember one person from church, I call her matriarch because it's one of those ladies in church that we look up to, who's like, the older generation. And she was preaching this sermon one particular weekend, and it was about when Jesus turned water into wine. And when Mary told the people who were there, whatever Jesus tells you to do, to go and do it. So that was her sermon. And then at the end of the sermon, she came up to me and she goes, I know you're going through a lot of challenges in your life. If you feel angry at God, tell God. If you don't understand what's going on in your life, tell that to God. Be real to God. And just open up your heart to him.
If you're going through challenges in your life, tell God. Whatever you're going through, Ruth is saying to you now, whatever you're going through, you need to tell God. You need to tell him. You need to tell God everything you're going through. You need to pour out your heart and put it before him and say, hey, take this burden from me. Wow. So Ruth, you're going through this. You're talking about this is all happening to you. The people around you, what are they saying to you? What's your own family saying?
People around me, well, first of all, they were concerned because obviously they could see how sick I was. My friends around me, they were just praying. They'd never see as low as I was this particular time. And I think, as I said to you, then when I have this day, this same day that, as I said, you stop in the morning and I'm praising God and I'm talking to God and I'm just saying to God that, you're going to make this way that's in here. And then it was interesting as well because it was Good Friday. And we know Good Friday is the day, like in terms of faith, that we look and we think about the sacrifice that Jesus made for each one of us. So there I was, like, contemplating this is Good Friday, one of the high days in terms of a Christian faith. And when I'm in the midst of all of this, I'm just writing down my thoughts in terms of feel. I was like, in the midst of all of this, that again, and I think this was the first time that I just sensed that God was just there with me. And it was an unusual feeling that God was there with me. And as I said to you, as they went
Ruth,
on,
Ruth, so did you see God, or you just believed he was with you? Did you
no,
see
I
him, or
will,
you just believed?
no,
Did you
I,
sense that he
no,
was there?
I sensed that God's presence was there with me.
Okay.
It was like that comforting presence that you have with you when you are going through challenges. You know that you're not there on your own. You know, it's you can't put it into words unless you've actually been there, because it's not something that happens every day. But it was just, I felt that, you know, God was just saying to me, yes, you're feeling low, but I'm here. You know, yes, you don't understand what's going on, but I'm here. And I think that when we go through that, and I think because this lady from church had just said to me, just pour out your heart to God, tell God how you feel. And it was never something that I had done in the past. I thought my emotions, you know, like, because we've been brought up that we must respect our elders. Mm-hmm. And therefore, God is like the supreme being that's there. So to go, you know, I wouldn't tell my elders how I feel. You don't talk about your emotions. You know, you go through life and you keep things to yourself. So now to be told that I can tell God how I feel, and if I'm angry with what I'm going through, I can share that with God. For me, that was a new experience. And it was so new that, you know, it took me several attempts to connect with God in that way.
And that allowed you to pour out what was inside of you. So yes. You were stressed, you were hurting, and that allowed you just to release it.
Yeah. And cry.
Because
I was just crying. Just crying. It got to the point that I was just crying. And for me, like, to be crying like that, that's not me. So, you know, when you really, really let God in, he will take that pain, you know, because you're real. You know, like if, say, for example, when you have a child and you can see that child is like sobbing, you know, you will go with that child because you know that they're really hurting. And I truly believe that day that God just came and said, you know what, I'm here with you.
Okay. Put a pin in that point, Ruth, because we're saying there's a lot of lonely people in our world today. There's a lot of hurting people. So much has happened in our world. There's a lot of discomfort. There's a lot of dissatisfaction. There's a lot of discontentment. And in the midst of this, you're coming out with a word today. You're coming out in this season, and you're saying to people that, what are you saying, Ruth?
I'm saying to them, be real. Be real.
You're saying be real.
You know, God.
But how do you be real, Ruth?
How do you be real? Like, you just, like, how we're having this conversation now. I mean, it's like you can put the mask on, but one of the things that when you're real is you have to take that mask off. And that's the hardest thing, because you're so used to wearing the mask. You're so used to telling everybody that everything is fine, but you know within yourself that things aren't fine. And it's you've got to reach that point that you have to find somebody. In my case, it was God that I found I could be vulnerable with. But it might not be, might not be a faith. So it might be a friend. It might be somebody that you trust, but you have to be able to make yourself vulnerable. And by making yourself vulnerable, then you're able then to start to heal that inner side. Because basically taking off the mask.
Is it that the hospitals, the medication and what the doctors were giving you, they'd virtually given up on you at this point in time then?
I wouldn't say they'd given up, but they knew that my health was deteriorating. You know, my friends around me, they knew that. My friends around knew that this time round, I might not come through this. And I think what was worst is I had the first about 3 weeks in, and then I had this time when I was sharing, when I was writing these devotionals and was due to go to this retreat then in May. And then I ended back up in the hospital again in May, rushed in because I was going in and out of consciousness. So I think it was like, you know, to have so many flares in a short time and the severity of them, it was like, you know, am I going to make it? You know, so me going away this weekend, yes, me going away this weekend, and the doctor saying it'd be good for me to get away. So you can imagine that you're at this low point, you're not sure, you know, you're reading between the lines of what the consultant's telling you. You've been there before in terms of my health when I've been really, really sick. And it's like I'm having to sit down and think, okay, if I'm not here, who's going to be looking after my children? So you've got 101 emotions that's running around. Wow. So when I go away at this retreat, and this lady now is telling me to come into this middle of room that they're having praise and worship, and you just sense that this is different. and I'm just crying. And as I said, I'm lying on the floor, and the people around me are saying that I've curled up in this ball and I'm still. And some of my friends are around me, especially one of my good friends who've seen that how sick I have been all this time. Now they're watching me and thinking, what's going to happen next? And for my friend who was there to touch me on the shoulder, and she says to me, Ruth, rise up. And I open my eyes, and when I open my eyes, these two women who were there taking my hand, and I'm standing up. And then when I'm standing up, one of the ladies, she took me around this room where these women were in the hotel, and we're embracing and we're crying, because we're sitting down and we're thinking, this isn't a church setting. This wasn't planned. But in the midst of this hotel, God decided to come and heal me in that hotel. And when I'm walking around the room and the women are saying to me, like how God spoke to Mary, that you're chosen, that God has a special work for you to do. I didn't understand, but I knew that, okay, that God has chosen me. And then it was like, I'd start the question, well, why me? You know, there's so many people in the world. Why would God choose me? Why would God come and visit me at this time when I'm at my lowest of low? But it was like he wanted to show me that despite everything that was happening around me, and I think this has become like one of my core messages now, is he wanted me to know that I was special.
So when you asked that question, when you asked yourself that question, why me now, God? Why? What answer did you perceive in your spirit? What came back to you? What was it that sent back to you as an answer?
Initially, there was the silence.
Pure silence.
But it was like, it was just silence, because it's like you're connecting, you know, you're having this conversation and you're thinking, okay, why me? But it was as I came back home that week, I started to write. And as I started to write, God was just like answering some of those questions that I'm asking him. And one of the questions and one of the conversations that we had, we went back to creation. As like I said to you, how I was on the floor, right? So I was on the floor and opened my eyes. And God was allowing me to connect up, almost like, you know, when we read in the Bible about when God created Adam and when Adam stood up, you know, that in moments of standing up and looking in the face of God and God saying to him, no, this is your job, the purpose. This is why I created you. And I think it was like in the midst of all of this, God was trying to let me know that I was special, but not just me, then to let other people know how special they are too. And so
let me take it to the point whereby someone's told you that it's time for you to write. Okay, someone's told you it's time for you to write. You've been through all of this, and someone's told you it's time for you to write. How do you then start putting it into context to write it?
I think it was like initially I used to write piggyback. So like, you know, the Bible app that we have on our phones, and that people write different devotions, and I used to write comments other people's devotions, like my views of how they are. So for me now to actually be writing these 3 devotions, listening to your voice, be a good witness, restored, refreshed, it was strange for me, but it was like, I know that it was God that was guiding. That's all I could say. It was like I was breaking down the word listening. What does listening mean? And listening to, and then listening to your, and then listening to your voice. And he was just like in and saying that when we listen to each other, that the conversation has to have a purpose, that it has to be a dialogue and not a monologue. And a lot of the times when we're talking to God, because we don't pause long enough to allow him to speak to us. And it was therefore, I suppose, in this time now that I knew some of the things I was writing weren't thoughts that I would think about, but it was like words that I knew that God was sharing. And I think that, you know, when we read the Bible and it talks about how God inspired people to write, and we read other books and we hear people talk about that inspiration, that God gives you words that you wouldn't normally think about, but you know that they're his words. And I think that's what started. And I just wrote down, and I think what was interesting is that weekend then when I went away and I shared these 3 devotions. So on the Friday, I shared listening to your voice. And the women there, we all went that weekend and we were listening to the voice of each other. And then on the Saturday, I shared the next devotion, which was called Be a Good Witness. And on the Saturday evening was when my healing took place. And then on the Sunday, the devotion I shared was restored and refreshed. And there I was going back home, restored and refreshed. And the women were there and they were saying to me, like, when did I write these devotions? And I said, while I was sick on my bed. And they're saying, well, do you realize these 3 devotions of what you did this weekend? And it was like God had impressed the order that I had to share the devotions. And I put like different color bands on the devotions. And it was like afterwards they were saying, you do realize then that this is what God is going to use you for, that he's going to allow you to listen to his voice. And as to his voice, then you're going to be a good witness. As you go and share your story and your experiences with others, then you're going to let them know that God is real and that God's still interested in us as his children. And then the third one, restored and refreshed, was the purpose behind it.
You just said, as you share your stories, as you share what you've been through, God is almost using everything that you've been through to talk to other people. You believe that with all your heart.
I truly believe it. And I mean, it's 8 years down the line now. It's 8 years from when this whole thing started, 8 years from my healing, 8 years from me being so sick, and
this is 8 years. 8 years.
It's 8 years.
My God. Wow.
It's 8 years.
8 years ago.
8 years ago.
And you've lived to tell the story.
Yes.
So how do you feel now?
How do I feel now? Well, the last 2 years for me have been very, very challenging. Deaths of close friends, problems at work. I've been through, I tell people I've been through hell and back. And I truly believe that weekend when I went away, when God put his healing hand on me, that if that hadn't taken place, I wouldn't be here now. Because the things I've had to go through, these would have put me in the hotel, in that hotel. Put me in one of these. Would have put me in the hospital.
You said you've been to hell and you've come back. You've been to hell and you've come back.
I've been to hell. Even now, I'm still going through challenges.
Wow.
And
challenges of life.
Challenges. Like my workplace is a challenging place. But it's like, I know in the midst of all of this, that I look for, when people tell you to start practicing gratitude, that's what I've started to do. It's like I've started to practice gratitude in the midst of the pain, in the midst of the challenges. What's the lessons that I'm learning, either for myself
but one of the things I've saw you do is you've moved your publishing now into writing children's books.
Yes.
Why? Yes. Why children's books?
Well, because I have 2 grandchildren. I have 2 granddaughters, and I wanted to allow them to connect up with God. So I've written a children's book called God's Gifts to Me. And the nice thing about it, when you have your own publishing company, is I've been able to personalize these books for my granddaughters and other church friends that them. So one granddaughter likes purple. So in the book, her name is in purple. Another one has gold is her color. So her name's in gold. It means that when their parents are reading these books to them, that they can see their name in the books.
Wow.
And it's just, so, and also like my students in school, I do a lot of personal development work with them. So they've commissioned me to write a book for them called Spread Your Wings, around the whole point that, don't let people pull you down. So, so I've gone into children's books as well as writing adult books, because that whole thing, as I said to you, this is why I said, if we rewind, when I listened to that TD Jakes, that you're going to get it back. And when God said to me that I'm going to impregnate you with an idea and you're going to be writing books for children, for adults,
pause there,
for women.
Put a pin in that one. Put a pin in that one. You said he's going to impregnate you with an idea. There are so many people out there who have ideas, who've been impregnated with ideas, and yet still haven't pushed all the way to implement the idea. What's the difference with making that idea become reality?
You have to, first of all, as I said to you, when that thought came, when I was listening to that TD Jakes, I had no idea I'd be writing. It's like it came that this is what's going to happen. I'm a person that I make a lot of notes on my phone. So I have like notes on my phone that go back to lots of different times, because if people want to say, well, when did you start this? And I just flick through my notes and I do them with them. I think when ideas come, that you need to have people around you to support you. So that's what helped me to do on this journey. that when I started to share with others the journey that I believe God was taking me on, I had others around me to support me in that journey. I think if I was on my own, I wouldn't do half the things I've done.
Hey.
But because...
Audience, listen to this, guys. Listen to this. You have got to have people around you that think the way you do, guys. You've got to have people around you that support your ideas, not people that tear you down. Ruth has just said it's because of the people around her that's helped her to push the ideas through and birth them into reality. What idea have you got today that you're not making happen? You need to listen to these next 15 minutes from Ruth and make notes, because these words are going to touch your life. Ruth, go ahead. Just tell them how to do it, Ruth.
So how do you do it? So on this journey, I started off. So I think this is when Alex and I first met. And God gave me this idea called 5 Steps to Learn. Now, you want to learn your ideas. How do you go about that? So if you look at the word steps, STEPS. So the first thing you need to do is you need to start. And then we're going to go from the start to success. You need to know where you're heading. You don't get in the car, drive anywhere. You need to have a destination. So the first thing you need to do is you need to start, and you need to know where you want to go to. Now, and then you know where you need to go to. The T is team. So you've got S for start. T stands for team. You can't go on this journey on your own. It's going to be lonely. There's going to be times when you're going to want to give up. But having a team around you, someone who's there to support you, to push you, to guide you, to teach you the skills that you need, then it makes such a big difference. The E stands for empowerment. Now, when you are looking in terms of that empowerment, you have to believe that you can. Now, there's 2 words, I can and can I. They're the same words. One way is positive. I can do this. I may need help from others, but I can do this. But then the other one is can I. Now, so many people have the can I attitude, the doubt, I can't do this. But if we have the I can attitude, then it makes such a big difference. The P stands for positivity. It stands for positive mindset. We hear so much people talk about having a growth mindset instead of a fixed mindset. You've got to be prepared to step outside of your... Now, you don't do that all in one go. You start off with where you are in your comfort zone, and you try something new, something small, and you see, okay, do with that. And then you move into your stretch zone, which is just outside your comfort zone. And then what happens is your comfort zone enlarges to take this of your comfort zone and the stretch. And then you move a step further and you go into this panic place, this place that you think that you can't thrive. If you've got the right support around you and you've got the right mindset, then you start to make the progress that you make. So what are the steps? Start R for S. T, have a good team around you. E, believe in yourself. Believe can instead of can I. And that's where the empowerment comes within you. Because when you look at the word empowerment, in the middle of the word empowerment is the word. And you need to decide, are you going to have that power or are you going to give that power to someone else? When you decide that you're going to have that power, you're then going to make this you need to make, difficult as they may be, but you're going to keep moving forward. The P stands for having a positive mindset. And when you have a positive mindset and have the right people around you, then you're able to be on that road to success. Now, sometimes when you go on this road, you're going to go backwards, but it doesn't matter. Sometimes when we go backwards, you hear that most people, when they make a successful, they fail. The first time around, you might not do what you expected to do. But if you keep trying, if you keep going, keep having the right people around you and don't give up, then you're able to make the progress. So those are the 5 steps. So how do you put those steps into place now? This is where it comes to. The first thing you need to do is to listen. When you listen, it might not be just like you're listening to me now, but as I shared with you, what I had to listen this was I was listening to something on YouTube. And that made a difference. And when I listened, I started to make notes. Because one of the things I find is when I listen and when I write down, then I can go back and I can review. So then you've got listen. Then E stands for engage. Do you engage the process? You can't be a bystander. You have to engage in the process. A stands for attitude. Do I have the right attitude? And then once you have the right attitude, R stands for reflect. You need to take some time out and you need to on the journey that you want to go on, but you also need to reflect on the journey where you've come from. And then once you put all this into place, you have N. N is the next steps or the new steps. The next steps might be in the journey that you're going, or the next steps and the new steps might be in a completely different direction. So this is how I use these 5 steps to learn to help me and help others go on the transformation.
This is amazing, Ruth. This is amazing. I love the first one you gave. You said S, steps. S is to start, yes? S is to start. T, get a team around you. Believe in yourself. Empower and believe in yourself. And then have a positive mindset. And what was the final S? Positive. What's after positive mindset? Success. Yes. Success. Hey, success always comes after hard work, guys. Success always comes after hard work. But in order to have success, you have to start. In order to have success, you need a team behind you. In order to have success, you have to believe in yourself. You have to empower yourself to take every positive mindset step that you need to take to make it happen. And then you will walk into your destiny. Then you will see what's ahead of you, my Ruth. This is amazing, Ruth. And then that final thing that you said, the learn, listen,
engage.
What was it? Listen, engage,
have the right attitude.
Have the right attitude.
Reflect on where you are.
Reflect on where you are.
And that's the bit that most people don't. You need to reflect. You need to have that time of reflection. And then once you have that time of reflection, then you can then take steps.
Wow.
Or a new
Do you hear that? Reflect on where you are. And the last one was your next step. What is your next step, guys? Hey, let me tell you something, all right? Ruth has made this plain. You cannot go anywhere. You cannot make anything happen without having a next step. You start, there's a next step. You start, there's a next step. You always have to keep moving, Ruth. Am I right, Ruth?
Definitely. You need to keep moving, but there needs to be a time of pausing and reflection. So even when you keep moving, you still need to, like when you're climbing up when they climb up Mount Everest or the big, massive expeditions, they always say there has to be a time of rest. You have to have that time to rest, rejuvenate, reflect who you are, and then think, okay, now that I've rejuvenated, now I've got the energy I need that I can continue the journey.
You just threw out the R's then. Rest and reflect, rejuvenate. My God, man, you're just pouring them out, Ruth. They're just pouring out of you, Ruth, man. That's another book, the 4 R's. That's another message in itself, Ruth. The 4 R's. Ruth, it's just been a pleasure having you on the show today, talking about your experience, talking about how you release the tension in your life, how do you release the frustrations, what you were going through. But of all the things you did, you believed and you hang on to your faith. Mm-hmm. You believed and you hung on to your faith. 8 years later, you're still talking, you're still pushing, you're still writing, and you're still making things happen. Ruth, this is an amazing story of how you got to where you are today with Listen to Your Voice. How can people make contact with you, Ruth?
So the best way to make contact with me at the moment is via LinkedIn. If you find Annette Ruth Pearson now. That's another story. Annette Ruth Pearson.
That's the next chapter.
Yes, find Annette Ruth Pearson on LinkedIn. You will be able to make contact with me there. I'm also on Facebook as Annette Ruth Pearson, and I'm on Instagram as Empowering Transformations. So if you need
repeat
to
that one.
Me,
repeat the Instagram one.
Instagram is Empowering Transformations.
Empowering Transformations. Ladies and gentlemen, you've had the opportunity of listening to Ruth Pearson. Ruth Pearson. Now, watch out for this lady. Watch out for this lady, because she'll be going across this country. She'll be touring this country, talking to lives of people about making themselves learn, take the steps and learn and reflect and take the next steps, making it happen in their life. 8 years later, she's telling the story. Guys, you have a story to tell yourself. You have something to offer the world yourself. and you are sitting where you are, very doubtful of what you have, very doubtful of what you have to offer, just look within you, guys, and let it out. Let it out. Allow it to flow out of you. Allow it to flow out with you. Just as Ruth has allowed the words to flow out of her mouth into pen and paper and onto publishing several books today. Ruth, what's your last word today to the audience?
I think I'd like to end with the quote, the time when you and I were having this discussion about this journey of life. And the quote says, listen to your inner voice and do not let anyone stop you from being the person you know within you need to be. I'll say that again. Listen to your inner voice and do not let anyone stop you from being the person within you know you need to be.
Ruth, that's amazing, Ruth. I am blown away with that last statement about listening to your voice. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just heard Ruth Pearson talking to us, taking the time out of her busy schedule to give a word of encouragement, give a word. And she said, make contact with her on LinkedIn, make contact with her on Instagram. And I tell you, you will not be dissatisfied. You will be pleased with what she has to say. And I can see the conferences, Ruth. I can see the seminars and conferences coming up, Ruth. Am I correct, Ruth?
Oh, definitely.
Now that we're in person. Now that we're in person, yes?
Yes.
Now that we're in person, I can see the conferences. So watch out for this space for Ruth coming back with her conferences, with her busy schedule, sharing a word. And let me go to our sponsor before we disappear today.
You are listening to the Message Talk Show and Podcast. Do you believe you have something to share? Do you believe you have something to contribute? Do you have a story to tell the world, to share with your community? Gandhi said, man often becomes what he believes himself to be. If you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. So join us on the Message Talk Show and Podcast with host Alex Gordon.
So guys, tune in again to the Message Talk Show. Tune in. Get your friends on board. Come on, just join us one Thursday morning and just listen to the inspiring people, changing people's lives one step at a time. You have a story. Make contact with us. Yes, make contact with us on the messagetalkshow.com. Miss the show.